Are you looking for a book to read? Maybe something with a bit more fantasy elements? Then I got just the book for you, and we're talking to the author of it right now. Are you ready? Let's go! Hey there, I'm Kame the Turtle, and you are watching Turtle Time. So, I found a new book out, and I personally loved it. So I reached out to the author to see if they would agree to do an interview with me. Please welcome the author, Lucas Grant, the author of the Saga of Fidonhaal series.
Hello everybody, my name's Lucas. Lucas Gant, actually, but it's all good. I also go by Wolf Vandercross on much of the spots on the internet I frequent. I'm a fantasy adventure author from Kentucky, and my first book, the Saga of Fidonhaal Daughters of the East, was published back in early 2002. And since then, I've been trying to garner some attention for it, as well to try to write some more.
Wow, so this book's been around for a hot second. And to give the audience a rough idea of how to describe this book setting, would it be fair to compare it to something like Game of Thrones?
I would say that it might depend on what exactly you mean. The show and the Ice and Fire novels that the show is based on, they most certainly have a place in my catalog of inspiration, but in regards to certain matters of tone or vibe, I'd say it's probably more inspired by some other things in that respect. Lord of the Rings, the Belgariad, if you've ever heard of that perhaps. But certainly Game of Thrones and Ice and Fire inspired it still. The books in particular inspired an element of my writing style because of my usage of POV character names as the first word at the start of the chapter. But of course, unlike that, the Ice and Fire books, the chapters are all simply named. I personally still number the chapters, as well as give a current date in the header for when the events of that chapter take place. And then I start the first sentence by citing the POV character by name. Also, like Game of Thrones and Ice and Fire, I would say that the book is intended for mature audiences, though I feel it's arguable that the exact vibes of the mature rated content are perhaps different from that of Game of Thrones. There is the dark fantasy, combat violence and stuff, and there is some sexual content, romantic intimacy, and stuff like that, but it's not intended to be adults only for those who might be concerned about that. In short, I would say at least later teens for age appropriateness. Reader discretion advised, that sort of deal.
For those who don't get what we're talking about, while we do have more adult situations present throughout the book, it's more fade to black when it comes to intimacy stuff. While the violence is present and does have some description behind it, but not full-on blood everywhere.
Well, maybe sometimes, and it always depends on the reader's imagination,
That's true. We have no power to control what you think of. I know we touched upon briefly the inspiration behind this. What was a few other sources of inspiration for you?
A lot of things really have inspired this. I am inclined to credit the video game Kame on the PlayStation 2 for being what really kind of clicked things first into motion. Before I had the setting called Fidonhaal, I had a different setting, and while I had anthropomorphic animals as a central part of it, there were more species, races, whatever you would want to call them. Besides that, I've just taken in a lot of different fantasy things over the years. There's, of course, Game of Thrones, Ice and Fire, and then there's the Lord of the Rings, and other bits of work by J.R.R. Tolkien. In particular, I would say the Silmarillion, in describing certain matters of the lore and backstory of the world. The Witcher, Conan the Barbarian by Robert E. Howard, and I guess for a little bit more of an anthro-presence, the Redwall series by Brian Jakes was also an inspiration, as well as Watership Down by Richard Adams. I feel that while other things might be comparable to it, the main part of the magic system in the book was inspired to a fair degree by the Avatar Last Airbender series, since most of the magic is tied to the classical 4 elements, and most mages employ gestures to work the magic in addition to mental and physical exertion. And going back to video games, there's Dragon Age Origins, that inspired things, in particular the lyrium potions that mages need to drink to resupply on magical energy. And in regards to my ideas for what I wanted to set up for the overall library of potential work for the setting, the Elder Scrolls and Final Fantasy game kind of inspired things as well, because in a number of those games, there might be connections and similar things present in them, but at the same time, they also kind of stand on their own. Whenever I can get more out for Fidonhaal, you don't have to read Daughters of the East to enjoy whatever story you are reading, and vice versa, but hopefully if you do find the setting and the stories and the characters interesting enough, hopefully you'll read at least some more of them, and that will just hopefully add to your enjoyment of the greater whole of your experience, however much that may be.
Fascinating. Now, throughout this book, we are constantly shown a series of different wolf-like characters, and only wolves. However, they are branched off into 4 distinct colorations, or more or less subspecies, if you would. Why is it only wolves present in your book?
Funny thing, as I mentioned earlier with my pre-Fidonhaal setting concept, there were quite a number of different animal character races. There was wolves, there was foxes, deer, lions, black panthers, squirrels, like chinchillas or some similar sort of creature. Back in high school, as a matter of fact, because that's how far back these ideas were slowly coming together and building up, I did a ceramic figure of the chinchilla sort of creature that had a basket on his back and a walking stick in its hands. All that said, however, as time went on and a number of things happened that changed things about the setting from its first iterations, I ended up desiring what felt like a greater sense of focus to me. So, as much as I like lots of different animals and their anthropomorphic character potential, I generally view wolves and canines as my personal favorites, and therefore I just decided to trim the list down to them, and in turn flesh them out more in regards to variances in their fur color, their range of cultures and subcultures across the world, that kind of thing. Furthermore, given that a theme I personally consider important to the story in question and the setting in general is the matter of faith, trust, and loyalty in numerous senses, and since wolves and dogs have been associated with being symbolic of loyalty and fidelity, I figured it was all the more appropriate.
Absolutely fascinating. By focusing only on one animal and the 4 distinctive fur colors, you really brought home the superficial reason for the conflict presented in the book, aka the color of their fur versus, like, humans, the color versus our skins.
And especially given how, like, in the setting, without going too deep into specific details of the story, in this setting, until the issue is brought up by the villain, if you will, no one really cared before. Like, this is a world where that kind of thing never really occurred to them before.
Yep, but unfortunately, after it occurs the first time, it just becomes ingrained. And that's why the real life issue of racism is such a hard thing to put down. I know this book came out in 2022. Can we expect any more coming?
That is my intent. At the present time, I admit there's a bit of a struggle in working on more, but not because I have no desire to do more whatsoever. Some of it is a matter of just everything else that I've got going on at the present moment. There's a measure of post-publication fatigue, I'll admit, as well as just having a bit of a period of time where I just wasn't sure what to do next. You know, I'm glad I did it, but afterwards I kind of had a really hard hit of, okay, now what? But that being said, I presently have the idea of trying to get a small anthology of short stories out sometime. They're meant to feature a character named Zongar Highsun, who, if you remember, was a esteemed warrior from a tribe that the Daughters of the East meet on their journeys. He's had adventurous, eventful life on his own outside of the issues that happen in Daughters of the East. I have also been scribbling down bits and pieces for a number of other story ideas that they've been on file for some of these for years now. And I would like to think that the next big story idea I think I have that picked out as well, but it'll probably be a little while before that really starts getting underway. So at present, I'm not inclined to give an estimated release date or production time frame at present, but it is still on the table. I am still wanting to do more eventually.
Who was your favorite character or characters to work with throughout this book series?
That's almost like being a parent and being asked which kid's your favorite. I'm not sure if I can give a single answer on that one. It may seem a bit typical to say it, but they're all special to me in their own way, especially in regards to the main cast. Queen Shiva is pretty high on the list. I guess if for no other reason than simply because of her role in the story and the effort I put into developing her to explain her role and, why she does what she does. But Liranu, I feel a fair regard for her, given her life journey and the highs and lows in it. I like Ruth a lot. I just like the concept of, a brave, capable lady knight. Mira's special for her forest-nestled life, which to me just sounds like a really nice, pleasant way to live, kind of simple and in nature and stuff.
I agree.
Donovan is a charming bard from the north, and I tend to like characters and settings of the north, of places, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And Verdok is a kind, gentle man. He's a lover, not a fighter, and he's devoted. And Alor, King Alor, by the twists and turns of his life's paths, has ended up in an extremely important position in the world and is with someone that he's come to know and care about very much. But as the story goes on, well, he finds himself in quite a bit of a bind, to put it simply.
Yep, in more ways than one, actually.
Yes, very much.
Won't give too much away because, hey, I encourage you to pick up the book and read it yourselves. Well, you have anything you would like to say to the audience?
I'd just like to say that if you're looking for a fantasy adventure, medieval sort of story, and you're not sure where to look, or you've given a number of the usual suspects a try and would like something new, I do have something on offer, and the people that have read Daughters of the East seem to enjoy it pretty well. It is available on Amazon.com for both print-on-demand and ebook iterations. So if you're an old soul like me and you'd like to be able to hold the book in your hands, you can order a paperback up and it'll be along in due time. Otherwise, the ebook's totally available. If you like the story or are interested in seeing what little odds and ends of news or updates might come in from time to time, you can look up the Saga of Fidonhaal Daughters of the East on Facebook. If you would like to check out some of my other things, including sample chapters and related artwork in relation to the story and settings, you can check out Fur Affinity, So Furry, DeviantArt. I hope to see some of you all around on one place or another online, and if you ever give my book a chance, that's greatly appreciated, and I sincerely hope you enjoy it as much as Kame does.
This sounded interesting to you. I'll put a link to where you can get the book in the description below. Or if you want another furry book, maybe something with a bit more futuristic take, then I encourage you to check out the Legend of Aya series. Playlist will be linked in the cards above and comments below. If you like what you saw and want more, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the bell for notifications when my next video airs. Leave a like, maybe a comment, and we shall hope to see y'all next time. Johnny.